Hello everybody, welcome. Nice to have you all here. This is our Advancing as a Carbon Literate Organisation webinar. So put simply, this is how to gain and then achieve higher levels within our Carbon Literate Organisation accreditation. It's quite a long title that, so for reference, we're going to call it CLO. That's what we call it in the biz here at Carbon Literacy. Okay, so to start with, and if I can get the key to work, here we go. Oh, there we go, a bit of a lag. A little bit of housekeeping. The first thing to say is that this webinar is not for anybody working at universities, colleges, or schools. So we actually have a separate accreditation called Carbon Literate Educators, which is for those organizations. So if you belong to one of those, probably shouldn't be signed up because hopefully it was in the description. But if you are, you can feel free to drop out now, contact us via email, and we'll introduce you to the suitable team. We're also recording this webinar, so that's something to be aware of. And all guests are also on mute. So if you do have any questions, feel free to pop those in the Q&A chat function. So you should see at the bottom of the screen, separate to the typical chat, is something called Q&A. Those questions will only be visible to our panelists if you click the Send Anonymously button. So that's an important little button you can click. Just to be extra careful, don't put any commercially sensitive information in your chat. I'm sure you wouldn't do anyway, but just to avoid any accidents like that. So moving on. In terms of our agenda today, we're going to be speaking for about an hour, so it should end at about 11 o'clock. I will be giving an introduction to our CLO accreditation. What is it we're actually talking about here? What's the purpose of the accreditation? I'll then be handing over to my colleague Christiane, who will talk you through the benefits of the CLO scheme. We've then got two fantastic guest speakers, David and Holly, from Adearo Precision Components and Copart, our gold and platinum accredited organizations respectively, who will be giving us some fantastic testimonials and stories of how they've achieved that. We'll then do a bit of a recap and some next steps, and then we can conclude with the Q&A. So again, if you do have questions, stick them in the Q&A chat. Some of them, if they're quick, easy questions, my colleagues Helen and Holly will answer in chat, but some of the more interesting ones we'll hold back and we can answer at the end. Fantastic. So as I mentioned, we've got some fantastic guest speakers today. First of all, I'm Ted. I'm the accreditation lead at the project, and I've actually been at the project for nearly 3 years now. So yeah, one of the more kind of experienced among my team, which is nice. We've also got Christiane from our advocacy team. She is incredibly experienced in loads of different ways. I can't fit them all in here, but in particular with training experience as a carbon literacy trainer, but also working specifically with SMEs and small businesses as well. So a real kind of expert in some of the stuff we're talking about today. We've then got David from Adearo Precision Components, who I'll be chatting to later on about the cost benefit analysis that Adearo did as part of their gold application. So that'll be a very interesting conversation. And then finally, we've got Holly Rose from Copart, who will be discussing with Christiane about their incredible journey to platinum, our highest level. So some really interesting guest speakers there coming up. Okay, so first question, what is the Carbon Literate Organisation scheme? A fair question. So in short, it provides a recognizable badge to showcase your organization's dedication to all things carbon literacy. It lasts for 3 years, so it's a 3-year accreditation, and it has 4 levels, going bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. CLO is applicable to all organizations, except those educational institutions I mentioned earlier on, who have their slightly separate scheme. But apart from that, all organizations are suitable, whether it be large corporates, SMEs, public sector bodies, local councils, charities, community groups, whatever it might be, a whole range of organizations can and have become CLOs. Put simply, really, the CLO accreditation supports the development of a carbon literate workforce, and it requires the implementation of a low carbon culture. So that's really the key thing. We want that low carbon culture to be embedded in your daily operations and almost just become a normal part of how you operate. That's what really the CLO badge is all about. Are you carbon aware and are you making sensible carbon decisions throughout your daily operations? So how big is the CLO scheme? The CLO scheme has grown to kind of gigantic proportions, really. It's been an incredible thing to see. We now have in total 334 CLO organizations, which is phenomenal. 124 of those have reached silver level, 44 gold level, and 15 have gone all the way to that top level at platinum. And we've actually got one of them with Holly at Copart coming to speak to us later on. For context, nearly half of these have joined within the last 2 years. So we've seen a really rapid growth of this accreditation in the last 18 months, 2 years. It's really gaining incredible momentum, which is very exciting to see. And interestingly, this comes despite us implementing a new set of criteria, an even more rigorous, stringent set of criteria early in 2024, which raised the bar of expectation, but nonetheless didn't prevent the actual acceleration in its popularity. So that's been really, really exciting to see. I think one of the keys to its success has been that because we at the Carbon Literacy Project don't deliver the training ourselves, and it's delivered independently, either in-house by businesses or maybe by external trainers, it remains fully independent, and our accreditation is fully independent. So that's one of the key elements of the accreditation as well. So who is already a CLO? As I mentioned previously, we've got over 300 CLOs. So can't possibly fit them on a single slide. We'd have spent about 20 minutes going through slides if we tried to do that. But as you can see, we've got an incredible array of organizations. I think the most honest way of putting it is that every sector you can think of has a CLO in it already. Whether it be the automotive sector, the NHS, government bodies, construction, breweries, hospitality, whatever it might be, there's an absolute ton of CLOs in all of those sectors. It's also worth mentioning that it's not only in the UK. So we have CLOs from a range of other countries as well, the US, Australia, Germany, Spain, Uganda. We've had CLOs in China and all sorts of different places as well. So it's a really quickly expanding and global scheme. So why become a CLO? Christian, my colleague, is going to elaborate on this in a bit more detail later on, but there are 4 sort of key reasons to start with. The first is that being a CLO reflects a permanent low carbon culture shift in your organization. So it really makes it clear that you're embedding those change permanently. It also demonstrates leadership in terms of sustainability, both to your own people, your own staff, but also to the wider sector. So you're really showing that you're willing to invest in your people and invest in your organization. Doing that clearly strengthens CSR. It sends a really positive signal to a wider sector, a willingness to make positive change and to build your reputation in this area. And then finally, in a very tangible way, it strengthens bids and applications for tenders. So we've had some incredible examples, again, we'll hear of in a little bit, but of local councils or large government bodies actually insisting on CLO status as part of their criteria for applying bodies and organizations. So yeah, it's got really practical uses as well. Okay, so I'm not going to go into too much detail here because we'll come back to the exact criteria around CLO. But the first few things to say about bronze and silver is that bronze and silver are mostly internally focused. So they require actions internally about what your business or your organization can do itself. It's judged in 3 ways. It's judged on training, so how much training you do. It's judged on impact. So how do you measure the impact of the work that you're doing? What carbon and money savings impact is it having? And then advocacy. So how can you advocate for carbon literacy, both internally, but also externally? Silver is really about expanding the work you've done at bronze. So at bronze level, you're sort of getting your plans in place. You're sort of establishing where you want to go with it. Silver is then about expanding that. How do you begin to engage more of your people? How do you begin to implement your plans? One key area we will come back to is course suitability. So that's an area I'll come back to later on in the project, in the webinar, I should say, because that's a key part of it, actually. And then gold and platinum is our 3rd and 4th section of the tiers. So Gold and platinum really begin to ask a lot more of our applicants. They don't just ask more in terms of training. We want lots more training. We have specific thresholds that must be hit. We don't just want greater impact and advocacy, but we also now ask for a new criteria, which is around research. Gold and platinum, we're going to go into a bit less detail on today because it's a little bit more bespoke. It's really about how your organization functions. There's no one size fits all approach. But we will hear an example from David and at Adearo about the cost benefit analysis that they've done as part of their gold application. So we'll come back to that in a bit more detail later on. So that's the introduction. I will now be handing over to my colleague Christiane, who'll be talking to you about the benefits of becoming a CLO.
Great. Thank you, Ted, for this great introduction. A quick introduction to who I am as well. I am part of the advocacy team at the Carbon Literacy Project, supporting organizations across a variety of sectors and guiding them through their stages of becoming a CLO, but also just implementing training and incorporating that within the organization. In this section now, we'll be looking at why you should become a CLO and see what it meant for organizations which have embarked on the journey of becoming CLO. So the CLO accreditation process really provides you with a framework to get the best out of your carbon literacy training. It helps you to set targets using the CLO standard and sticking to timeframes. Something that Tad probably will go into a bit more detail is that usually the longest we would see somebody sitting at each of these stages would be 3 years before they expire. But we see lots of organizations actually moving up much faster through those different levels. Also something, I mean, as recent as yesterday when I was on a client call, I had the great feedback also from somebody who was saying how much they appreciate the high quality of the supporting materials that help them guide through the process as well. So it's really there to guide in a very simple, clear way to move through those different levels. So through the actions then that learners take create during the carbon literacy training, you will get everybody involved in your carbon reduction decisions and measures and drive these really forward through that. So whilst the training formally doesn't really sit there to contribute to specific frameworks like ISO 14001, organizations do use carbon literacy though to get their staff on board and to get them engaged and to support and achieve these different standards and accreditations that they're working towards. It is also a visible badge, so we always say show it off proudly, put it everywhere you can, you work for it hard, and it really shows the high numbers and the high commitment that you give as an organization to the carbon literacy training, and will ultimately then also for the carbon reductions that you're planning to do and achieving. It also demonstrates your values that you stand for and the scale of the actions that you want to take. So as many reports also showing, and Tad has pointed out a little bit earlier on about how many CLOs that we actually see come to apply for us. So especially a little bit in the context of the current noises that we hear in politics and so on, really the reports still show different. And as a recent one has just published by Deloitte, it also stresses that sustainability is still a top priority for generating business value. So this is really here to support you and to create you value to really move on that carbon reduction journey. And we can hear and see how businesses and all sizes of organizations or sectors are still taking this extremely serious and really want to make those changes. So looking into a bit more detail now into those different levels, and again, why carbon literacy is so important to you and how it can help you. As you're scaling up through the carbon literacy training within your organization and outside, as you're moving through these different levels, here are some specific examples that help you. So it can make your supply chain safer. Kuehne + Nagel, the large logistics company, for example, have gone even beyond their supply chains and getting all their stakeholders engaged. They're making it their mission to spread carbon literacy, and they are inviting customers and partners into their carbon literacy training days and hope through this that they can drive the transformation in the logistics sector as well. Carbon literate actions then also can drive a decrease in energy, resources, consumption, and costs, of course. As we all know, if you're reducing your carbon emissions, you're also working on reducing your cost. Lookers, for example, saved about £500,000 just by switching stuff off, which then equates into 916 tons of carbon. So a huge amount of carbon reduction involved there. Groundwork Greater Manchester stated that it's been absolutely fundamental to their own carbon reduction. And what it's done for them was to start conversations and generate some challenge within the organization as well from all levels, which was fundamental in generating those important conversations that they really needed to have. You see an improved organizational profile, as we've seen with Burner Care, for example. They were the first healthcare manufacturer to achieve bronze level CLO status, again showing their commitment to reducing their carbon emissions. It has to interact with the community and stakeholders. JCB Finance has worked on this, for example, by having it as a cause, and which they say as being an excellent foundation upon which they are then building further learning and development program, and which helps them internally to move to net zero, but also their customers on their transition to green equipment. It also demonstrates, as Ted mentioned earlier, that your commitment to CSR, but also something that I also really seen as a trainer. It really gets your staff engaged and they are really happy. It is a positive training. People come away motivated to jump into action. Electricity with Northwest, for example, embedded things like rewards and recognition, and thinking about that with a carbon theme that came then as a result of conversations that they were having as part of carbon literacy training. So becoming a carbon literate organization can also lead to you committing to signing up to other industry standards and supporting your staffs on their personal development, as lots of them want to and can get involved with the training as well. So best to describe this actually is Melissa Pan from AG Impact. So we'll just play you a short video for you to hear from her directly how they've experienced it.
Our CLO journey began at the end of last year. We started training the team. So we've got a small team of employees and we've got a large team of consultants that we call our members. And they were working on client projects, and we recognised that actually they needed the understanding as well of the carbon impact of the work that they were doing. So we developed the course and we trained all of our members. And so the natural next step was to apply for the CLO award. First of all, we recognised that there was an importance of everybody understanding the impact on the environment of their actions, and it doesn't matter what business you're in and what business which the industries that our clients are in, that we felt that it was important for everybody to have that understanding. So it kind of became a bit of a no-brainer for everybody to be certified carbon literate.
Great. So Melissa couldn't have said it better. It's really a no-brainer. Moving through the different levels of CLO guides you in amplifying the impact of your carbon literacy training. You will start to look beyond your own organization, really start to look outside, be it in your local area, be it in your sector, be it across other businesses that you are knowing, supply chain and clients alike. Here is also another great example from Beko. And you can see here the quote from Steve Clark, the head of sustainability. They are manufacturer of home appliances. You very well know the name as well. So their carbon literacy training helped them to bring the sustainability agenda into the day-to-day running of their business. Everybody, just something switches within the learners as they're going through it, and they really understand what it means for them. Also, carbon literacy, as mentioned earlier, can be found across all sector and organizational sizes, including consultancies, membership bodies, and also public sector, such as local authorities, which brings us nicely to looking at Manchester City Council's story. So as Councillor Tracy Rowland states here, the impact for Manchester City Council was to influence as many stakeholders as possible, with procurement being a very interesting, I always like to highlight. They did not only look and hear and engage within their own organization, but they also really want to hear from others there. And we can hear also quite a lot from organizations that sometimes organizations do make it mandatory as part of their procurement and when they are adding and signing up details and clients' contracts. So that's something that is really, really interesting to hear. And also something else I really would like to quickly mention is to showcase Manchester City Council's high commitment to carbon literacy, as they have now embarked on proudly coordinating the initiative of the city becoming the first carbon literate city. So what amazing impact there. So as a last quick example, I just would like you to look at eco-surety and how they are moving up through the levels. We will hear a bit more later on from Holly as well from Copart, but as you can see here on their journey across, they specifically mention their leadership commitment to carbon literacy, which then filters down and into incorporating carbon literacy into their staff's performance management. In short, moving through the different levels of CLO brings about that culture change within your organization. So if you feel, for example, that you are a sustainability lead, you got your net zero strategy, but you're really struggling to get people to get on board, or if you're at the very beginning of your carbon reduction journey and not sure where to start, committing to becoming a carbon literate organization will help you tremendously. So I'm now handing back over to my colleague, Ted.
Thank you very much, Christiane. Yeah, no, very, very interesting. Thank you very much. Okay, so we're now going to be speaking to our first guest speaker, David, who's hopefully, yeah, spotlighted there. Fantastic. Nice to see you again, David.
And you, Ted.
We're going to be speaking to David from Adearo Precision Components. He'll be talking to us about the fantastic cost-benefit analysis that they did. So, David, very nice to have you. Would you like to introduce yourself? Who are Adearo Precision Components and what do you do?
Yeah, I do. So my name's David. I'm the Health, Safety and Environmental Officer at Adearo Precision Components. Adearo are a manufacturing company based in Devon. We specialise in CNC manufacturing of precision components to individual customer requirements. So we operate 31 CNC machines, and that's a combination of milling machines and lathes. We typically manufacture components used in the medical industry, measuring sectors, as well as very interestingly components made for equipment for forensic analysis.
Thanks, David. That last point about forensic analysis really caught my eye. But that does sound very interesting. Well, no, thanks very much for coming along.
That's all right.
So I suppose first question: how did you get into carbon literacy yourself?
Yeah, so I actually attended carbon literacy training through our parent company, Indutrade, back in 2023. The training itself spoke to me personally as a father, as well as I feel we have a responsibility for future generations to act where we can. When the opportunity came up to become a carbon literacy trainer, I of course jumped at the chance. To date, I've delivered training to multiple organisations as well as internally at Adearo. I found that the wealth of information gained from the carbon literacy project to be absolutely invaluable, both personally and professionally.
Oh, fantastic. No, that sounds that. I think you describing it there as hitting you personally as a father, I think really struck me when we were talking earlier on. I mean, I think that is not an uncommon thing for people to say. I think, yeah, people really do see that sort of impact on future generations in particular when they're thinking of loved ones and family and that sort of thing. So, yeah, that's a very nice way of putting it. Okay, so as part of Adearo's gold application, you chose as your research element, so that research being that sort of fourth additional factor that we judge gold and platinums on, to do a cost-benefit analysis. So what was your thinking there and what were the sort of benefits of going down that approach?
Yeah, so for us, it clearly highlighted the benefits of our pledges versus the overall cost to the business. I found it's all too easy to write off an idea as being too expensive. However, seeing carbon literacy pledges in action, the motivation of the staff to explore carbon reduction ideas, the positive return in our financials was a definite win for us, and to coin a phrase from earlier, a no-brainer. While we already have achieved ISO 14001 accreditation through BSI, and that demonstrates our commitment to an environmental management system, there we found that there was previously a clear gap between these ISO requirements and meaningful employee engagement. Since 2023, when we introduced carbon literacy at Adearo, that gap has closed significantly. The cost benefit analysis enabled us to quantify these achievements and provide an opportunity to visually express to our employees, customers, and our supply chain.
And that's really interesting. Many of our CLOs do exactly as you described there, which is use the CLO accreditation and the key elements of staff engagement that sort of comes with it inherently for their ISO accreditations. So those do tend to go hand in hand for a lot of our CLOs. So you conducted the cost benefit analysis. Would you like to talk us through what the results were? I know you did it both from a cash perspective and from an energy saving perspective, and you've got some very interesting results out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So as a company, we're a very metric focused business already, as before mentioned, as part of the ISO accreditation. The payback period for us was almost immediate, making the cost of carbon literacy training, certification, etc., almost nominal compared to the return. I'll give an example. Our energy monitoring pledge alone has yielded a reduction of around 20,000 kilowatts in year one. As you can imagine, we've got a lot of machines. And we're on target to reduce our overall consumption by around 150,000 kilowatts, and that's across year two. This estimates to be a saving of around £50,000 to £60,000 in reduced energy costs. So it's a staggering amount of money, and over 61 tonnes of CO2 equivalent saved. So for us, being able to link these wins to their root cause, the initial carbon literacy training, I find it's unusual for businesses to be able to successfully demonstrate this, but for us, it made the entire initiative highly beneficial and definitely financially viable.
Fantastic. That's an incredible summary. £50,000 to £60,000 in reduced costs and 61 tonnes of CO2. Yeah, phenomenal. You've obviously made a range of changes. Would you have one or two specific examples of the sorts of changes you actually made in order to reduce CO2 emissions?
Yeah, I mean, I've only got 10 minutes to speak, but I'll definitely fire some across. So one of our early pledges was the fixing of leaks in our compressed airline system. We found making air is phenomenally expensive. So by fixing these leaks meant our compressors, they run more efficiently, thus reducing overall energy consumption and carbon costs associated with power generation and maintenance. Other projects internally have been efficient machinery energy monitoring, allowing us to identify and resolve issues more quickly. Consolidating deliveries of material and consumables into the facility. Changes in packaging types, amalgamation of waste collection suppliers, and then for us, industry-specific recycling techniques such as briquetting and cleaning of waste oils, to name a few.
Fantastic. No, really, really interesting. It's I know that was part of a much wider collection of changes you made, but it's nice to hear some of the specifics. Okay, so final question. I suppose, would these changes have happened as quickly, or would they have happened at all, I suppose, without carbon literacy being involved? I suppose, how much of an accelerant was it?
I mean, that's a great question. So it's been clear for us that the initial carbon literacy training cohort back in 23 really kicked this off for us, and it caused a snowball effect of ideas. So we have 20 employees trained so far. That's 20 brains thinking of carbon reduction ideas within their own agency of work, rather than just one person in a shared or dedicated role. So in fact, this has led to more ideas than we have the time to implement. On the training itself, it's a very knowledge building course. You learn a lot in actually a very short amount of time, and gets you really thinking about the carbon costs of things that you might never have thought about. One of the first things I was told and I learned when starting this journey is it's just like going into the shop and picking up an item. You might feel the quality and know roughly how expensive that item is, but carbon literacy training gives you a sense of the carbon costs of everyday objects we typically take for granted.
Fantastic. No, that's a brilliant way of summarizing it. It is about just having that idea of the cost and the value of carbon, like we do with products in cash terms. Before I let you go, David, did you have any kind of final summary thoughts of your overall experience of carbon literacy for your business?
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely no complaints from us as a company or myself as a trainer. Everyone at the project been very helpful and knowledgeable. Costings for certifications and certificates, etc., are reasonable and fairly weighted against organisation size. As a final statement for myself, I would personally implore anyone to adopt carbon literacy training into their organisation and certainly reach for those next levels, platinum, silver, bronze, etc.
Fantastic. What a way to sign off. Thank you very much, David.
Thank you.
That was really, really interesting. I will now be handing back to Christiane, who will be speaking to Holly Rose from Copart.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Chad and David. So we will now be hearing from Holly at Copart, who've been amazing going through all the different levels of CLO. And she will first go through a few slides, just a couple, to showcase their journey. And then we'll go through a few questions as well. So over to you, Holly.
Thank you. I'm Holly Rose. I'm the People Development Manager at Copart UK Limited, and it's lovely to be here today and excited to share and collaborate with others who are looking to make a difference in their own business. So in January 2025, earlier this year, we were really, really thrilled to achieve the Platinum CLO accreditation status, which is a milestone that reflects our commitment to education and action across all levels of our business. A little bit about us. So Copart are a global leader in online vehicle remarketing and recycling. We were founded in the US in 1984, and Copart globally now operates across 11 countries, 250 locations, 190 markets, and generate over $3 million in sales per annum. In the UK, we specialise in the auction and recycling of over 500,000 vehicles per year, and we work with insurance companies, fleet and lease organisations, rental firms, dealerships, and we sell and recycle everything from cars and motorcycles to agricultural and commercial vehicles through our online platform. My role as the People Development Manager focuses on developing our people, and that's a workforce of approximately 1,700 teammates. And a key part of what I do is to embed that environmental awareness and responsibility into everything that we all do to bring Copart together. And I've been part of our carbon literacy journey since the very beginning, and I'm also a carbon literacy facilitator as well. So let me tell you a little bit about our journey. Copart has a goal called Plan to Net Zero, and our CEO, Jane Pocock, wanted an accreditation program to support that journey. So in early 2022, we got in contact with the Carbon Literacy Project, and our senior leaders attended an automotive carbon literacy training session led by Auto Trader. And by that summer, we achieved our bronze carbon literacy organisation status. So we kept that going, building on that momentum. By January 2023, we reached our silver status, delivering 120 online sessions, and we delivered it in 2 half-day sessions for our audience. Using the Carbon Literacy Automotive Toolkit, where we trained 190 teammates in our manager population. So we took a top-down approach when we delivered to our workforce. Later in 2023, we achieved our gold CLO status by training over 575 teammates across the business using not only that 2 half-day online session approach with the Automotive Toolkit, but we created our own blended approach for learning to cater for other roles across the business. And that was a combination of e-learning and face-to-face delivery, because the online session didn't quite work as well for those types of role. But I'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. And then in January 2025, we hit a major milestone. We got that platinum CLO status, having trained 80% of our workforce. And we also started to deliver carbon literacy to others outside of our business, but within the automotive sector. Now, what we found upon delivering the training is we found that 80% of our teammates before having the training had minimal or no knowledge of climate change ahead of the training that they received. But upon completing it, 96% were saying they felt they had good knowledge of climate change issues. Now, the output of improving teammate knowledge saw us acquiring the Green Parts Specialist part of our business, which allows us to recycle more vehicle parts than ever before. We also have a fleet of vehicles using Euro 6 engines, currently the cleanest types of engines available, and we're continually looking to improve our transport division to minimise the impact that we have. We also fulfilled a number of pledges from our senior leadership team. So one of our senior leadership team wanted to recruit, actually Mark on the slides there, he wanted to recruit a sustainability manager, which we didn't have before starting this journey, because we realized that we needed specialist expertise to improve how we can work more sustainably and to reach that plan to net zero goal. One of the other pledges that we had from one of our teammates in the business was to introduce a process to reduce a huge amount of paper that we were using, and it was specialist paper. And we saw a reduction as a result of that in postal deliveries across the country. So everything was moved to an electronic approach, using all our existing systems. So because of them attending this training and making that pledge, we saved on paper, we saved on money, we saved on miles driven for not only the postage of that paper, but also the delivery of receiving it in the first place, because we didn't need it anymore. But we also have energy saving initiatives going around the business. So LED lighting, smart meters, and also the behaviours of our teammates in using energy around the business. That's delivered approximately a £22,000 saving annually, which if you convert that into carbon dioxide equivalents, it's about 11.49 tonnes reduced emissions there. So in terms of our tailored training delivery, one of the biggest challenges we had with educating our workforce was the accessibility of the training. At Silver status, we had our 2 half-day online sessions using the automotive toolkit. We aimed it at managers who had the equipment and the availability, the freedom to join those sessions virtually. So it worked really, really well. However, many of our frontline teammates didn't have access to devices. They didn't necessarily have the freedom to join for their 2 half days. So it made it harder for them to participate. So to bridge that gap, we introduced a blended approach to learning. So we created 3 one-hour long e-learning modules and a shorter face-to-face session, because we wanted to keep that discussion element in the learning. And by doing that, it ensured everybody could engage, get involved, receive the knowledge that they needed, but also have that opportunity to ask questions, discuss, debate, and bring their pledges together. Also, operationally, it was quite difficult to remove those teammates from the business for 2 full half days. So this blended approach gave us some flexibility to deliver the training without disrupting the operation. We also embedded carbon literacy into new teammate onboarding. So with new starters around between the sort of 3 and 6 month part of their career, we will invite them to deliver, to attend their training as a way of educating our teammates, keeping on top of making sure that everybody is clear in what we want to aim and what we want to achieve as a business with regards to this approach. So those steps really help us overcome barriers and make sustainability learning inclusive and practical. So that's a little bit about our journey.
Thank you very much, Holly, for those great insights. It would be beneficial for us to delve a bit more deeply now into some of the points that you mentioned there.
Sure.
So, thanks. Can you tell us, why did Copart choose carbon literacy, and do you think your decarbonisation actions would have happened at this scale without carbon literacy?
Sure. So I was involved in selecting the accreditation program right at the beginning of the journey, and we looked at a few different options. But what we found was that carbon literacy, the journey felt very clear in terms of what we needed to achieve, and also helped us stretch and improve what we were aiming to achieve with Plan to Net Zero. We also found that other accreditations were a bit more expensive, so there was a cost benefit there with going with carbon literacy. And interestingly enough, we found that one of our competitors was already on their carbon literacy journey. So we did a bit of research and found that our customer base did recognise that as a really credible accreditation system. So with all those factors together, it felt like a really good choice for us. In terms of whether it's we would have made these changes without this accreditation program, I think I'd strongly say no. I don't think we would have reached what we've done without the journey that carbon literacy have supported us on. It's given us an awareness as a business to challenge ourselves, stretch ourselves, and make changes that I don't think we would have achieved without it.
Thank you, Holly. I hear that a lot with the organizations I speak with, and I can see it from having trained people come together and they actually have that moment to share these ideas and really come up with those meaningful actions. So that's really great to hear from you too. It would be also good to hear if you encountered any barriers to the training, and if so, how you overcame them.
Barriers to the training, I think probably the availability of those frontline teammates. So we have 3 1-hour e-learning modules, and we have that shorter half-day piece of learning that altogether those teammates will achieve, and they can achieve that over a longer space of time rather than just attending the 2 half days. It just makes it a bit more flexible for us. With that came volume. So as we went through the different levels of the accreditation program, the numbers of people we had to train went up. So we gathered together a group of people who had the desire and the interest to get involved, but also the skill to be able to deliver our blended learning approach to our teammates, and they had the energy behind them to really make it engaging and exciting for people. So we not only got them all carbon literacy facilitator certified to support us with that, we had a train the trader program internally where we would support them in getting them certified in the first place. Then they would observe a qualified trainer to deliver with all the notes, and the notes that you get with the toolkits are just phenomenally clear. It's inspired me in other ways as well. But also then they co-delivered, and then they would deliver with somebody watching so that we are sure that it's being delivered consistently across the organization. So that was a challenge to overcome, but it seems to be going quite well.
Thank you, Holly. And again, I think that would be, was really, really interesting to hear from others as well who have got a different mix of workforce as well, and to really adapt the message to your audiences. So one last point I would like to mention is that Copart was one of our sponsors, was our sponsor, main sponsor for the CLO Awards in June, and was to become former sponsor through the Carbon Literacy Trust and as part of our partner scheme, which is one of the criteria that can be chosen for becoming a gold CLO. So if we have anybody on this call who is watching the recording, who is working towards a CLO or platinum, please do get in touch. And if you want to take this step into Copart's footsteps for the next CLO award ceremony. Thank you again, Holly, for the ongoing support that you show us as a charity, and which helps us really enormously to spread carbon literacy further. So I hand now back over to Ted.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Christiane, and thanks to our fantastic guest speakers. Okay, so the final section now is a bit of a recap and then some of the next steps for you on your CLO journey. So, as promised earlier on, we're going to go into a bit more detail about the specific criteria for bronze and silver. Again, bronze and silver are more about how you operate internally within your organization. We're not going to go into as much detail about gold and platinum because, as mentioned, gold and platinum are slightly longer term for most organizations, but they're also a bit more bespoke. There are lots of different options to go down. It's designed flexibly so that it works for all different types of organizations. Adearo and Copart, even our two guest speakers, will have had slightly different approaches, taken different options, slightly different criteria. Okay, so the first criteria for bronze is to have at least 2 members of staff certified, including at least one organizational leader. So that can be a senior leader, maybe somebody on the board or somebody reporting directly to the board, that sort of thing. The second criteria is to have access to a suitable and accredited course. So 2 key elements there. The first is that it is accredited. That is kind of goes without saying, but also that it's suitable. Now, on the following slide, I'm going to come back to that course suitability question because it is sometimes misunderstood. So we will explain that one a little bit more. I think one key thing to say here, and I think I saw it in the questions earlier on as well, not every organization has to create, develop and accredit their own bespoke course. That's not necessarily the case. Lots of organizations, particularly smaller ones, attend external training run by trainers, consultants, in some cases, even other CLO organizations who then partner with them and deliver training. However, whatever training you do receive, it must be suitable and it must be accredited. The third criteria for bronze is to outline your future plans. Nothing here is at any point going to be requiring a 50-page PDF report. It's not that level of detail. The future plans is a page of information, but it's about outlining what are your plans, which course are you looking to use and why it's suitable to you and your people, how many people are you planning to train, which senior leaders are you looking to engage, over what timeline, and where does this fit into your wider sustainability plan? It's all about just giving evidence to us that you've really thought this through and the CLO work isn't a flash in the pan, but it's part of a longer, more consistent journey. We would then be looking for a short video reflection from the aforementioned organizational leader. Nice and simple, 90 seconds, 2 minutes. Why did they do the course? What did they get from it? What were some of the benefits of what they learnt? And finally, for bronze, is some way of reporting the impact and the outcomes of carbon literacy. So again, there are many ways of doing this. We're not too prescriptive in how you do it, but some examples might be some businesses and some organizations embed the impact measurement as part of their KPIs as a business. Some of them establish carbon literacy training as part of their induction for new staff. And actually, again, from our guest speakers, we heard of some of those examples. So that is the list of bronze criteria. You've got sort of 4 or 5 key criteria there. One key thing is that in the chat, my colleague Holly has given a link to the CLO pack. Loads more detail in there. All the questions should be answered in there. But we do also have a full-time CLO team who can also answer questions as well. Then moving on to silver. The first criteria for silver, which I think is the key criteria, is to have a substantial percentage of your workforce certified as carbon literacy. So this depends on the size of your organization. If you're a very small organization, it can be as high as 50% of your people being certified. If you're a much larger organization in the thousands, it can be down at sort of 12 to 15%. So again, it is a scale that's adjusted to your business or to your organization. The next criteria is some way of integrating carbon literacy into your performance management. So again, is it that carbon literacy and carbon actions are part of the ways in which you score your team and annual reviews? Is it that you have incorporated carbon literacy into the way you yourself engage with your supply chain or your tenders yourself? Again, lots of different ways of doing it. The next criteria, visual promotion. This is the one we never have to chase anybody on. Any sensible organization is going to be writing blogs, posting pictures of their training day. Staff will often post pictures of them with their certificate on LinkedIn, that sort of thing. So how are you sort of advocating externally for carbon literacy? And then finally, the publication of a 1-page case study. So what is your story? What have been the benefits of carbon literacy? Okay, course suitability. So this is a key element, as we just mentioned on the previous slide. So in an ideal world, every organization that does carbon literacy would have a highly bespoke course that was developed specifically for their business and only for their business. Clearly, that isn't entirely plausible or realistic. Businesses are busy. We work with a lot of SMEs. It's not always possible to build entirely bespoke courses from scratch. So what we have here is course suitability in terms of how bespoke a course is and how focused it is, depending on how large an organization is. So it sounds a lot more complicated than it is. We have 4 broad types of course, ranging from the very top in terms of highly focused to those are organization specific courses. Those are courses built for a specific business or a specific local authority with them in mind, made for them. And those are obviously the sort of the most specific you can get. The next are sector specific courses. An example here would be a food course that is then attended and used by lots of different food businesses. Below that, in terms of specificity, we have SME courses. So these are designed for SMEs in mind. They are, business focused. They're about lots of different changes SMEs can make, but they are made for a range of SMEs. They're sort of SME generic, as it were. And then finally, we have CLO courses. These are carbon literacy for interested organizations. And these are sort of initial accelerator courses for a handful of people from a single business to try out carbon literacy, get their heads around it, see the benefits of it, and then go back to their organization and plan further steps. So if you're a micro or a small organization below 50 staff, you can attend any course in terms of specificity. So you can attend a CLO course, you can attend an SME course, and of course, in an ideal world, you could attend a sector course as long as it's relevant to your sector. If you're in a food business, it doesn't make sense to attend an automotive course. If you're an SME, so that's 50 to 250 people, you can attend an SME course or a sector course or an organization-specific course, but you can no longer attend a CLO course because those CLO courses are really only for a handful of people from a small organization. The large organizations from 250 or above can no longer now attend SME courses as part of their CLO application. They need to be attending at least sector-specific courses, or in an ideal world, an organization-specific course. If you're unsure about any of that, and there are obviously grey areas with all of these things, do again come to us proactively and we can talk you through it. Okay, now on to pricing. Fantastic. So our pricing is also dependent on your organizational revenue, so roughly what your turnover is annually. And the key thing to say here on pricing is that you only pay the difference between your current level and the level you're moving up to. So I've actually highlighted in the middle there, the 250,000 to £5 million example. If your business was sat at bronze and you've already paid £1,500 plus VAT to become a bronze, if you then move up to silver, you don't pay 2,250 on top. You actually simply pay the £750 difference between the two. And in fact, if you were to move up to gold, you would again pay another £750 to move up another level. So it's not 1,500 plus 2,000 plus 3,000 all aggregated. The entire system is really designed to incentivize you to move up the pricing ladder without being sort of punished cost-wise. That's the logic there. And in fact, taking that example all the way through, if you moved up to platinum step by step, it would cost you in total there 3,750 plus VAT. It's also very flexible in how you go about it timing wise, and I'll explain why. Lots of businesses move very quickly into bronze and silver, and then need to take a bit of time often to sit back, see the impact of it, implement the actions that they've sort of established, see the benefits, and maybe take a bit of a pause. Some businesses will go there and sit at silver for 2.5 years. Now, bearing in mind the accreditation lasts for 3 years, that's not a problem. You could then 2.5 years in, enact your gold actions, apply to become a gold, move up to gold at £750 additionally in that example, but it re-triggers the entire 3 years. So you don't lose out in any way in terms of that timing. So actually, whether or not you kind of get your head down and you race straight through to platinum in a year, or whether or not you take your time and you space those gaps out a year or 6 months apart, it doesn't matter from a costing perspective. The key thing to bear in mind is to ensure that you do renew or upgrade within that 3 years. If the 3 years does expire, then you would then be rejoining the scheme afresh, and the cost is higher then because you're rejoining the scheme. Okay, so a bit of a summary of where we're up to in terms of the accreditation process. So as mentioned, you can download the CLO pack and submit your evidence to our CLO team. Included in that would be the pricing element, which you can get from the pricing matrix, which is also in the chat. The accreditation lasts for 3 years, and as long as you renew or upgrade within that 3 years, then you only pay the upgrade price, those smaller incremental prices. On accreditation, you receive a CLO certificate, a beautiful recycled wood trophy, lots of promotional support, and also an invite to our CLO Awards, which are held every year in Manchester in June. Get hundreds of attendees, nice drinks and canapes. It's a really fun evening. You get to bring your team along and celebrate the great work that you've done. One quick bit of admin here for people. We can also reshare this at the end of the presentation. If you are interested in signing up to our mailing list for the CLO scheme, news, events, updates, if you scan this QR code, you can join that. We'll put this back up at the end as well, so everybody can join that. It's just an easy way, get some updates, get some information without having to provide your email address directly. And then finally, next steps to take away with us. If you already have one, do contact your advocacy lead to discuss this further. So lots of you here will already have somebody within the Carbon Literate project that's been assigned to you. Let's make sure we discuss those elements of course suitability and pricing and make sure there's no misunderstandings. If not, contact our advocacy team at advocacycarbonliteracy.com, who can give you an advocate to support you. This still applies, I would say, if you do work with an external trainer or consultancy. Do get in touch with us proactively, and let's make sure, again, course suitability and pricing is understood. For any further questions, go to our website. And to be honest, good luck, and please keep in touch. We're here to support you, and we can answer any questions. So we do have a few minutes left. So I will hand over to my colleague Helen, because I believe we may have some questions to answer in the Q&A. Obviously, we finish at 11. But we and the panel will be hanging on for a couple of minutes afterwards to answer any questions as well.
Thanks, Ted. Perfect. I was just spotlighting everyone again who might be answering questions, or including myself. That would be helpful. So we did have one question, and yeah, just want to make this really clear. So it was around whether having an accredited course that was a toolkit, so one of our carbon literacy toolkits, whether that would be appropriate to use in terms of your CLO application. So yes, absolutely. As long as the accredited course, so for example, I think the example here is that they are a council, a local authority, and they're using the local authority toolkit. So yes, absolutely. If you're using the local authority toolkit, that counts as a sector specific course and can be used towards the CLO application. Absolutely. If you are an organization that has kind of different audiences, I suppose, within your organization, or there might be other courses that might be more relevant, you can also use multiple courses if there's a better course for different team members, different members of staff. But yeah, it's all about the audience and making sure that it's appropriate. We've not got any more questions at the moment. Do feel free to pop any others in the Q&A. It could be a question for us. It could be a question for our guest speakers as well. If that's okay, Holly Rose and David.
The only thing, Helen, is probably what you've clarified in the chat, but just so everybody's aware, you're completely right to say that the public sector organisations, particularly local authorities and the NHS and that sort of thing, of course, are actually capped at the £5 to £100 million tier in that pricing matrix that I shared before. So, you know, huge authorities and government departments don't pay those higher private sector costs. So yeah, that's worth bearing in mind.
It's Ted. Perfect. Oh, we've got a couple more questions coming in now. So we've got a question from Katie around organizational leader and who this can be. I can answer this one, or Ted or Christiane, do you want to answer this one? Yeah, okay, I'll answer it. So this needs to be ideally your most senior person within your organization, or it could be one level down. So it could be, yeah, CEO, or actually it could be a board member, a trustee as well, if you're that kind of organization that is relevant, or someone that reports directly to those people or that person. if that makes sense. So it is your top tier, most senior people. And we can, if you're unsure as well, just let us know. You could give us your organizational structure and you could mention someone and we can let you know. Just make sure that you do have the most senior person and someone who will count towards your CLO application as your certified person. No worries, Katie. Let me have a little look. Oh, there is a question for Holly Rose at the moment. If you want to have a go at answering this, it was around how you created your course and the e-learning and in person, the split, I think, which topics were split.
So yeah, we didn't want to stray too far away from the work we'd done at silver level with the automotive toolkit and delivering it online. So essentially we used the content of the automotive toolkit but just rejigged it into our blended learning approach so that we had the same messages, similar sort of activities, but just adjusted for the new way of doing things. So we had the 3-hour-long-ish e-learning modules. So one was the David Attenborough Climate Change the Facts video. We had one around the science and impacts, one around policy, and what's happening in the automotive industry. And then we had the classroom session, which brought all of that to life and allowed us to get a bit more interactive with people. So our toolkit inspired us.
Amazing. Thank you, Holly. Yeah, I think people are often really interested to know how different organizations are doing things and what works well. And yeah, especially in terms of the split. So that's great. Thank you. We've got another question. So this question is from Prue around volunteers who are interested in carbon literacy, potentially needing a shorter course. So normally using the sector kit, can you adapt a shorter course, e.g. 2 hours? So that wouldn't be a carbon literacy course. That is what we would say. So in order for it to be a carbon literacy course and for them to be certified carbon literate, it would need to be the full day split however you want, possibly into multiple sessions, but that's 7-8 hours in order for them to go through the full journey and come up with their actions and become certified carbon literate. It may be that if you have some volunteers who possibly don't have as much time, it may be more appropriate, or maybe just to start with, doing a bit of an intro for them, maybe to kind of test things. If they're really interested, then perhaps they could go on to do the full carbon literacy course. But yeah, in order for it to be a carbon literacy course, it does need to be the full 7-8 hours.
Just on that point, Helen, I can see Caroline's asked a question in the chat about did the people attending our blended sessions, did they become accredited? And the answer is yes. The e-learning, the 3 hours with the e-learning and then the shorter face-to-face, that all totaled up to the 8 hours that you'd need to become accredited, and they put their pledges forward through there.
Thanks, Holly. Thanks for clarifying that as well. That's really useful. We've not got any other questions in the Q&A at the moment. And I know we are a few minutes past. Yeah, a few minutes past 11. Oh, we have got someone with their hand up. Helen Rogers. I'm not sure if you can come in and speak and ask your question. Or pop it into the chat. I don't want to miss it. Okay, yeah, no worries. We can always answer that question afterwards. But yeah, perhaps I'll hand back over to Ted to wrap up the session.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, I think we've kind of covered everything now. Thank you very much for everybody attending. Do feel free to sign up to the mailing list with that QR code. And in terms of next steps, anything you're unsure about, we've got a big team here to provide support. So do get in contact with us via either the advocacy@carbonliteracy.com or the CLO at carbonliteracy.com. And thank you again to our guest speakers. Yeah, it was great. It was great having your contributions.